fix the problems that are staring you in the face. The problems are invasion of the lands owned by the indigenous peoples of Chinese landing by persons whose presence in the village they do not approve of. Now, these people who are in the village have allegedly deployed drones to monitor the whereabouts of the Tushao and his councillors. It has gone out of control. It is a runaway train, and I'm fearful for the lives of the people of Chinese landing. Now, the news is overloaded with a number of issues. Guyana is steeped in allegations of corruption at the highest level of government. There are allegations of constitutional violations. There are allegations of extrajudicial killings. There are protests against these developments in the country, and there are suggestions about ethnic conflict or ethnic intolerance. And so these issues are overtaking the news in our country. And while all of this is happening out here on the coast, a number of things are happening that are adversely affecting our indigenous Guyanese population. And I thank you very much for having me so that we can discuss some of these issues.
Yeah.
The National Tushao's Council Conference comes as a result of some amount of pressure having been exerted in the media and in other places. You may recall that at the debate of the National Budget 2022, the Minister of Marine Affairs made it very clear that there will be no National Tushao's Council Conference in 2022. There was actually no budgetary provision for the hosting of the National Tushao's Conference Council. National Tushao's Council Conference, I beg your pardon. But the indigenous peoples have been quietly making their case. Some of us have been making our case in the media. And the international organizations have been speaking to the rights of indigenous peoples and the right, particularly, to free, prior, and informed consent. But when you may believe that this is what is driving the hosting of this NTC conference, it may very well not be. The Constitutional Commission, the Indigenous Peoples Commission, that commission has got to be put in place. And so the National Tushao's Council has the right to nominate 3 of the 5 members. The other 2 members will be nominated by the non-governmental organizations. Obviously, the People's Progressive Party has no control over what the NGOs do. So they want to dominate the National Tushao's Council to get their 3 nominees on this commission. And they will stop at nothing. The question for me, though, is where does the money come from? How is it being accounted for? And will the indigenous peoples have their say on the issues that affect them? Particularly the issues relating to the rights violation in the Region 7 community, and as well in Regions 1 and 9, which we will discuss in some detail.
Right, and Mr. Wilson, thank you for that brief discussion there in terms of the National Two-Shell Council Conference. But I want you to tell the audience, because many of them may not know, how important and critical is the National Two-Shell Council meeting that deals with the issues and the rights of Amerindians in this country. Tell us exactly the importance of the conference and how should government act when decisions are made out of the conference?
Let me say that the National Two-Shell Council is essentially the National Assembly of Indigenous Leaders of Guyana. That's in essence what it is. When they come together, they discuss their issues, they present their positions on various issues to the government. The law provides that the National Two-Shell Council may advise the Minister of Amerindian Affairs on several matters, including legislation. And which brings me to the other point, the issue of the revision of the Amerindian Act, which was started, I believe, in 2017 or 18. In fact, I think it was 2017. The indigenous leaders of this country and the entire indigenous community appealed while we were in opposition for the revision of the Amerindian Act. And some time was spent visiting villages, engaging people at all levels, and getting a sense of what the needs were. Having done that, the APNU AFC administration launched formally the consultative process to treat with the revision of the Amerindian Act. That was a process that was far advanced. It benefited from budgetary allocations. Persons were retained to work with the indigenous peoples where they live, to sensitize them, to clarify issues for them, and to help them, if they required assistance, in putting their positions on paper. And so that process started, and like I said, was far advanced. This administration has refused to go ahead with the consultations with a view to revision of the Amerindian Act. Again, some pressure was brought to bear, and surprise, surprise, somebody went to Isinaru or somewhere, some other village in Region 7 and said, look, we are going to have this consultation, we're going to start consultation with respect to the revision of the Amerindian Act. You can't start something that is almost complete, you have to resume it. So I believe high on the agenda for discussion at the NTC conference is the question of the revision of the Amerindian Act, something that people all across the indigenous community expressed a desire to have. They advocated for this. They have contributed meaningfully to the conversations that we've had across the country, and their recommendations are now part of record which are lodged at the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. So it is a process that must be completed, and while I am happy to hear that the process will again get some attention, I'm deeply troubled by the fact that there was no budgetary allocation for this process, which is a fairly expensive one. And yet, the People's Progressive Party leadership seems to be saying to the people of this country and the world by extension that, look, whatever we feel like doing, we can do. We can just push our hands in our back pockets, pull out some money and pay for these things to happen. We believe that these things have got to be carefully planned. The budgets have got to be prepared and submitted, and it must form part of the national estimates to be debated in the National Assembly. You don't just flip your hand like this, collect some money and pass to people. I mean, it is, first of all, devoid of accountability. It is unreasonable, this knee-jerk reaction. There has to be deliberate planning in this process. So the revision of the Amerindian Act, I believe, will be high on the agenda of the indigenous leaders when they meet. And in addition to that, the rights issues, Isinaru, Chinese landing, and the Marudi mining and how it's impacting the Wapishana people. These are critical matters which the indigenous leaders will, I am certain, be addressing. There are issues also with the what I consider to be unreasonable and unlawful suspension of Tushaus who are perceived to be supportive of the AP and UAFC, and the commissioning of committees of investigation and so on. And in other villages where the Tushaus are openly supportive of the People's Progressive Party, when there are very strong allegations of violation against the Amerindian Act, brought it in writing, in petition for the removal of those Tushaus, the subject minister simply, you know, as we say, put it under the carpet. That's the end of that. But where there are no viable allegations of transgressions against a particular senior councillor, in the Rupununi village of Parishara, that councillor has been suspended and a committee established to investigate. My position is that where there are allegations of financial impropriety, there must be investigations. And so if that's the nature of the allegation against the Tushau at Karasabai, they should be investigated by all means. But in like manner, the Tushau at Hururu, against whom similar allegations have been made, must also be suspended and must also have an investigation done into the matter. The Tushau at Wiki Kalkuni must be investigated, must be suspended. There has to be a transparent approach, a very reasonable and balanced approach to this whole business of investigating alleged infractions. People's careers are on the line, people's future are on the line, and therefore we have to be very careful. You cannot in good conscience suspend a senior councillor who is elected by the villagers because she is alleged to be a supporter of the people's of the AP and UAFC coalition and is not acting according to expectations of the People's Progressive Party. That's utter rubbish. But I will stop there on those issues because I'd be very happy if we can spend a couple of minutes.
Just before you go to the other issues, I just want to clarify something. All these matters that you just raised, have they been brought to the attention of the chairman of the Tushau Council? Has he addressed them? Has he, brought them up to the authorities? What is the state of play there?
Well, the life of the National Tushau's Council executive body ended when there were elections for Tushau in the villages some two years ago. There has been no National Tushau's Council conference for a couple of years, and so the executive body of the NTC has not been elected. So there's a void there. There's no chairman and executive members of the NTC as we speak, which raises the interesting point. The law provides that where the minister feels that an investigation should be launched into a petition to remove an officer who was elected, that the minister will name his or her representative, and that the Regional Democratic Council and the National Tushau's Council may name a representative each. Now, in the absence of an NTC executive, who named the representative for the NTC to serve on the committees that will investigate the Karasabai Tushau and the senior councillor from Parishara? In my humble view, in the absence of the executive body of the NTC, there is no constituted body to name or nominate a representative to serve on those committees. And therefore, any appointment by the minister of anybody purporting to be a representative of the NTC is a violation of the Act, and it nullifies whatever decisions are likely to come out of the investigations. So I would be very interested, very interested in how our leaders, when they meet, deliberate on these matters. There was a case in, I believe, 2020, when Tushau Marbell Thomas, I believe, of the village of Campbelltown in Region 8, was suspended, investigated, and then dismissed. At the time, the Regional Democratic Council was not constituted. Councillors had not taken their oath of office. But yet, there was a representative from the RDC as a part of that body. Which councillor nominated that person to serve on that investigating body? So all of these violations, in my view, are taking place just simply because a minister of government wants to have a particular outcome when it comes to these matters.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Let's talk about Chinese landing issues right now. Titling of village lands and mining rights and giving out and all of that. Give us an update of what's happening right now with Chinese landing.
Well,
and where Chinese landing is located, for those who don't know.
Chinese landing is a titled indigenous village that is located in Region 1, Barima Waini. Now, Chinese landing, the residents of Chinese landing became the lawful owners of their lands on the 21st of April 1976. That is when the Amerindian Act was amended. There's what is called the Amerindian Amendment Act of 1976, assented to by President Arthur Chung on the 21st of April 1976. Chinese landing, I believe, is listed as number 54 among the villages and 2 districts that were titled by virtue of this amendment. So Chinese landing, the people of Chinese landing, who are predominantly Carinya or Carib as we call it, they are my blood relatives. I am the proud descendant of a Carib woman, and it pains me to see what is happening in Chinese landing. It hurts. It is unimaginable. In or about 1995, the government of Guyana, through the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, issued mining rights to a local private investor. And from then to now, there have been matters in court. Matters have reached as far as the Caribbean Court of Justice. But from then to now, the indigenous peoples of Chinese landing cannot enjoy the benefits of their land, the land that they own legally, lands that have been theirs from time immemorial, lands which have been titled to them in 1976. They cannot enjoy the use and the peaceful occupation of those lands.
Why is that so?
Within recent times, well, let's backtrack just a little bit to make the point that the government of Guyana is required to respond by the 15th of July to the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, UN CERD. The government seems to be spending most of its time trying to establish who wrote the UN committee and what it was that they complained about, rather than examining the realities of the life and livelihoods and the perils and dangers that are faced daily by the people of Chinese landing, and respond to the allegations contained or the recommendations contained in this document from the UN committee. And so they have asked for an extension to reply. Now, extension to reply to what? It is the People's Progressive Party government under Dr. Chedi Jagan who gave away mining rights to people from outside of Chinese landing without leave or permission of the people of Chinese landing who are the owners of the land. Chinese landing today has a population of just under 300 persons. Of that number, 70 children are in school. The school population is 70. That is of today. Now, people cannot beneficially utilize their land. People cannot go and enjoy a game on the ball field because miners have taken over. Miners are allegedly telling the villagers where they can and cannot go. And at the moment, my information is that there are more than 500 outsiders, non-residents of Chinese landing, who have literally invaded that village in the name of mining. And this includes Brazilians, I'm told. People who have claimed to have rights to mining. Now, the Amerindian Act is very clear. Section 5 of the Amerindian Act, I believe it is Section 5, yes, it is Section 5, that speaks to how a person gets to visit an Amerindian village. It says that a person other than a person referred to in Section 8, which is a government official who's working on infrastructure development and so on, who wishes to enter lands, village lands, shall apply or obtain the permission, shall apply for, I beg your pardon, and obtain the permission of the village council. So a person who wants to visit the village shall apply for and obtain the permission of the village. Now, these people are walking into the village. They're taking equipment, bulldozers, front-end loaders, crushers, and all these different kinds of equipment are going in there. And they are allegedly escorting these equipment with automatic rifles, persons carrying automatic rifles, intimidating the villagers, breaking up the infrastructure. There's a penalty for failing to get the permission of the village council to enter the village. And that penalty, according to the Amerindian Act, is not less than $5,000 and not more than $10,000 per offense. So we are talking about the village as it is now ought to have collected at least $5 million in fines. But the administrator of the Amerindian Act, who is the minister, has done nothing to safeguard the rights and interests of the indigenous peoples of Chinese landing. And this is outrageous. This is unbelievable. This should never, ever, ever happen. Now, these people who are in the village have allegedly deployed drones to monitor the whereabouts of the Tushao and his counselors. There are 4 drones, I'm told, that are used in Chinese landing to monitor people. I'm also told that some of the people who operate there get information from some source or the other regarding when the GGMC officers will visit. And so they will disappear from active duty 2 days before these operatives arrive in the village. And then when they go there, they will say, look, there's nothing happening here. What are you talking about? The indigenous people, the Cariña people, the Carib people of Chinese landing have been denied and continue to be denied the basic human rights, access to the village that they own legally by document, by title. Where is the administration in all of this? What instructions need to be issued to treat with the invasion of Chinese landing by persons who claim to have rights to mining. I remember looking at the Vice News report where Mr. Jagdeo said that the Amerindian Act of 2006 gave to indigenous people subsurface rights to minerals. Not only is that a blatant lie, but if the indigenous people had that right as he said they did, or that he said that they do, why would you go and give mining rights to outsiders and not to the villagers themselves who own the land? The Tushao feels threatened. He feels he has received threats, he says. Threats on his life. Everywhere in the village, I'm told, you turn, there are persons with high-powered rifles. Now, what have the indigenous peoples of Chinese landing done to anyone? If you want to preserve this glowing image of Dr. Jagan as a nice person who cares about people, and perhaps he did, why don't you correct the wrong that he did in 1995 when his government gave mining rights to persons outside of the village without even reference to the people who own the land? I say, right the wrong now. Convene cabinet tomorrow morning. Have a decision taken to reverse the mining rights given to whoever it was and preserve the rights of the Karinya people of Chinese landing. Start there. Forget the distractions that have been set in motion on the coast. Get into Chinese landing and fix the problem. People are afraid for their lives. Their children cannot go to school. The roads are damaged. The gold is being dug up from the earth and taken away from there. And the village is not benefiting in any way at all. Let's fix the Chinese landing problem today. The human rights of the people are being violated. The rights to ownership of the land are being violated. The right to freedom of movement within the village is being violated. People feel as though they're being held hostage by people with guns that they do not know, whose presence in the village they do not approve of. They are powerless in the face of these people who are heavily armed, wealthy, and appear to be desirous of staying there at all costs and doing what they want to do. Let us fix this problem. This thing, I don't know what would have been the situation if Chinese landing population were 3,000 people. People have nowhere to plant. People cannot go and do their small scale pick and battle mining to get a piece of gold to take care of their families. They are prohibited. The people of Chinese landing are prohibited by the people who have invaded their lands from even going and eking out a living for themselves and their families. How much worse can it get? And I want to see what our indigenous leaders are going to say and how they're going to treat with this issue between the 11th and the 15th of July when the National Tushos Conference is convened. This is a critical issue, and it is only one of the issues, one of the villages facing massive rights violation under the People's Progressive Party. This is unbearable. It is time that the international community zeroes in on this matter. It has gone out of control. It is a runaway train, and I'm fearful for the lives of the people of Chinese landing. What if they decide to stand up and say, look, we've had enough, please don't pass this line, we're going to stand here and we ask you not to pass this line? What if that happens and people decide that they're powerful and they decide to bring harm to these peaceful people of Chinese landing? In other countries, indigenous peoples have treated with these kinds of situations very much differently. Our people are peaceful people, and the atrocities that are being done to them are unforgivable. We must attend to this problem, and we must attend to this problem now.
Is there any sign from the Amerindian leadership in Chinese landing going to the minister on an emergency to see if they could resolve this matter before the Two-Shell Council starts?
There's only one resolution to this matter. Cause the miners to withdraw. They're there illegally. No miner, I am told that of the approximately 500 people who are mining in Chinese landing, not one of them has the permission of the village council as prescribed by the law. And so this is not about engaging the minister. This information is all over the media. The indigenous peoples of Chinese landing have proceeded to the point where they have engaged the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And instead of the administration treating with the matter, the administration wants more time from UN SWORD. To do what? The government should say to UN SWORD, we understand what is happening in Chinese landing. We have seen the reports in the media. We have sent our people on the ground. They have seen what is happening, and we are going to fix it by the 31st of July. That is what the government needs to be saying to UN SWORD. Not give us more time to find out who sent the document to you and what they complained about. Fix the problems that are staring you in the face. The problems are invasion of the lands owned by the indigenous peoples of Chinese landing by persons whose presence in the village they do not approve of. 2, persons are bearing arms and intimidating villagers. 3, persons who are bearing arms are saying to villagers, you cannot go to this area of the land that you own. People who are bearing arms are allegedly issuing threats to Tushao Oren Finance. Persons bearing arms are preventing people from accessing playfield facilities in their village, lands that they own. Persons who are invading this village of Chinese landing are taking in equipment without the permission of the village council of Chinese landing. Equipment which are being taken in are destroying the roads, breaking up the bridges. These are things that the administration is aware of. The administration needs to take urgent and immediate steps to fix these problems that stare them in the face and say to UN SWORD, well, we have identified these problems, they are in the public domain, we are aware of it, our officers have visited and we know of it, and we have fixed them. Can you say to us what other complaints have been made? That is what the government needs to do. Not get on a high horse and pretend that all is well in Chinese landing and everybody is comfortable. No one is comfortable. Everyone is fearful. People want to access the land that they own and can't. If they put on a little plot, a kitchen plot here, and somebody comes and they find a trace of gold in the area, they rip up the people's garden and access the gold. How right is that? How lawful is that? How reasonable is that? These issues are staring the government in their faces, and they have what it takes to fix these problems, and they need to take urgent and immediate steps to fix these problems. And I am calling on the international community, all foreign countries with embassies and high commissions in this country, I am asking you to take note of the violations of the rights of the Karinya people of Chinese landing in Region 1, Barima Waini, and use your good offices to work with the administration of Mr. Ali to cause these problems to be fixed in the best interest of the Karinya people of Chinese landing, who are the legal owners of their lands. Lands which they have traditionally owned from time immemorial, lands which have been titled to them in 1976, lands which they cannot now enjoy, and which appear to them and to me and to any reasonable observer that they may never get to enjoy for as long as gold is known to be beneath the surface of the lands owned by the people of Chinese landing. I appeal to every international mission in this country to take note of what is happening and bring to bear the kind of influence, the kind of encouragement that is necessary to cause the Ali administration to act in the best interest of the people of Chinese landing, and later on in the best interest of the indigenous peoples of other villages and communities across the country who are suffering from lack of attention, from rights violations, and from the inability to adequately utilize the lands that are theirs because of considerations that are inimical to the very best interest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan Williams.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. This has really gotten to me, I must tell you. I'm very emotional about this. My grandfather comes from that general area. My mother comes from that general area. Chinese landing, the residents of Chinese landing are family. We come from the same line. We're all Karinya, we're all Carib. We all feel for each other in the same way as people feel for their own on the coastal Guyana. We too are emotional about issues that affect us in the way that this matter in Chinese landing is affecting our people.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Welcome.